Okay, today we're going to look at some review problems involving fractions. So we all know that when it comes to fractions, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing are not your favorite things to do. But we've got to be able to do well with them because we need to be able to put them in an equation later this week. So the first problems we're going to look at are with adding fractions. We have 1/3 plus 2/4. And remember, when you add fractions, you need common denominators. Now, there's several ways you can go about finding a common denominator. One way to find a common denominator is you can just multiply 3 times 4, and in this case, it would give us 12. Sometimes that's not going to be the smallest common denominator you could have, and sometimes it will. In this case, we are going to use the 12 because 12 will be the smallest common denominator for 3 and 4. So to get to 12, we're going to do 3 times 4. If we multiply the bottom by 4, we have to multiply the top number by 4 as well. 1 times 4 is 4. So on this side, 4 times 3 gave me 12. So 2 times 3 gives me 6. After we have common denominators, then we can add them up. And you add straight across. 4 plus 6 is 10 over 12. Now, 10 over 12 is not simplified. 2 goes into both of them, so we will divide by 2, and we get 5/6 as our answer. The second one we're going to look at with adding fractions is 7/5 plus 6/11. Again, we can just multiply 5 times 11 to get a common denominator. This time, that's going to be our best option again. We did 5 times 11 to get to 55. 7 times 11 is 77. 11 times 5 is 55. So 6 times 5 gives me 30. Once we have common denominators, we can add them up. 77 plus 30 will give me 107 over 55. Now, with that, you're not going to be able to simplify it. We could make an improper or a mixed number, but in 8th grade, we really like the improper fractions better. So I would just leave this one at 107 over 55. On the next section, we're going to look at subtracting. Now, just like with adding, you have to make common denominators. So again, I'm going to make my little note over here. We're stuck on something. We need to have common denominators. So my common denominator for 5 and 4, again, we can just multiply 5 times 4 and get 20. That will be the smallest one this time. So we did 5 times 4 to get 20. So 2 times 4 is 8. 4 times 5 is 20. So 1 times 5 is 5. And then I can subtract. 8 minus 5 gives me 3. Keep your common denominator. So my answer would be 3 over 20. And that will not simplify. My next problem, I have 3/4 minus 7/8. Now, if I multiply these two denominators together, I would get a common denominator of 32. But we need to think, that's not going to be my smallest. We need to think about multiples. So if we think about multiples of 4, 1 times 4 is 4. 2 times 4 is 8. Well, I could get both of these to a denominator of 8. So that's what I'm going to do. So it saves me some simplifying in the end. 4 times 2 gave me 8. So 3 times 2 is 6. 8 doesn't change. 7 doesn't change. So when I subtract, 6 minus 7 is -1. And you keep your denominator of 8. So now, this answer would be -1/8. I know we're mixing negatives and fractions. A little stressor for some of you with both of those things, but I promise you can do this. Let's look at multiplying and dividing. So typically, multiplying and dividing, you feel a little better with. They're not quite as tricky. To multiply fractions, you're going to go straight across. -6 times -5 is positive 30. 7 times 6 is 42. Now, at the end, we would have to simplify this. You got to think about what numbers go into both. So 2 goes into both. 3. What else could go into both? We could get all the way up to 6. So I'm going to divide both by 6, and I would get 5/7 as my answer. However, if I rewrote this problem down here, some of you are very comfortable with cross-canceling. You learned it in 6th grade and felt good with it. Some of us still struggle. So what cross-canceling is you look at the two that are across from each other. Does 7 and 5 have anything in common? No. Does 6 and 6 have anything in common? Yeah, 6 can go into both of them, or 2, or 3. So I'm going to say 6 divided by 6 is 1. 6 divided by 6 is 1. So now I have -1 times -5, which is +5, and 7 times 1 is 7, and I get an answer of 5/7. I just did my simplifying when the numbers were smaller instead of when the numbers were bigger, because I end up with the same answer either way. Now, I'll do the same thing for this one right here. 1 times 9 is 9. 3 times 7 is 21. We just go straight across. 3 goes into both of those, so I'm going to divide by 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 21 divided by 3 is 7. So I got an answer of 3/7. Now, if I rewrote this problem, and we're going to try to cross cancel. 1 and 7, nothing goes into those that's the same. For 3 and 9, 3 can go into 3, and 3 can go into 9. So 3 times 3 is 1. Or 3 divided by 3 is 1, 9 divided by 3 is 3. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 7 is 7. So again, I just did my simplifying when the numbers were smaller. Either way, you end up with the same answer. Now let's look at dividing fractions. This is always where some of you're really good at remembering what to do. We just sometimes mix up which number we're flipping around. So when you're dividing fractions, you're really multiplying by the reciprocal. The reciprocal is the opposite, so you're going to flip the second number over. But a lot of you remember it as keep, change, flip. So you would say 1/5 times 1/3. So we kept the first one, we changed, dividing to multiplying, and we flipped 3/1 to 1/3. And then you multiply across. 1 times 1 is 1. 5 times 3 is 15. So my answer would be 1/15. Now, on the bottom one, if I do KCF, or multiply by the reciprocal, -2/7, division becomes multiplying. 5/6, flip it upside down, 6/5. -2 times 6 is -12. 7 times 5 is 35. My answer, -12/35.